Hey everyone, I'm Dan Sege from Hydro Ottawa, and I'll be hosting the ThinkEnergy podcast. So here's today's big question. Are you looking to better understand the fast-changing world of energy? Join me every 2 weeks and get a unique perspective from industry leaders as we deep dive and discuss some of the coolest trends, emerging technologies, and latest innovations that drive the energy sector. So stay tuned as we explore some traditional and some quirky facets of this industry. This is the ThinkEnergy podcast. Welcome back, everyone, to our latest episode of the ThinkEnergy podcast. The rise in green construction is projected to reach $460 billion globally by 2022. It's a clear sign that more of us are embracing cleaner living and a desire to tackle climate change and carbon emissions from the comfort of our home. Did you know that 111 million tons of greenhouse gas emissions are released into the atmosphere every year from Canadian homes and buildings? In fact, approximately 60% of Canada's energy usage is from heating and cooling our buildings. When it comes to home design and construction, passive homes and other low-impact builds are changing the building landscape thanks to informed and environmentally conscious consumers. At a high level, a passive home works with its environment, reducing the need for additional energy for heating and cooling. Some factors include how a home is positioned or oriented on the parcel of land, how it makes use of sunlight as an energy source, its air tightness, and overall indoor air quality. Net zero and passive homes don't look any different from other recently built homes. Even on the inside, most of what makes the home efficient is happening behind the walls, in the foundation, or on the roof. Perhaps the surest way to tell a passive home from a regular home would be to look at its utility bill. Certified passive homes are 80 to 90% more energy efficient than a typical home built to code. And as demand rises and costs fall, energy efficient homes are paying for themselves faster than ever before. That being said, awareness and incentives may be the keys to greater adoption. According to the Canadian Home Builders Association, there are only 456 certified net zero buildings in the country. And according to Passive House Canada, there are currently only 67 certified residential, commercial, and institutional buildings. So here is today's big question. What exactly goes into a passive home? And what can homeowners expect with respect to their carbon footprint and future energy bills? To talk about these high-performance homes, we've invited Casey Gray, the founder of an award-winning sustainable building company, The Conscious Builder, and the host of the Conscious Builder podcast. Okay, let's get started. Casey, thanks for joining us today. Perhaps you can tell us a bit about yourself, your background, and what's led you to sustainable building.
Yeah, I guess I have to go back a little bit. My background, I guess if you want to go all the way back to when I was born and raised in Ottawa. So I've been in Ottawa my whole life, in the east end of Ottawa at the beginning, and then moved to the west end and south and all over the place since I've been in construction, essentially. And married, very happily been with my wife for going on 16. We were trying to figure this out the other day, like married 7 years, but anyway, 16 years, I think at this point. We have a 7-year-old who's doing great. So very happy with that. We're navigating the school system like everybody else who has kids. Luckily, we have one to deal with. So I'm sure with multiple kids, it's a lot more difficult. So I'm not complaining by any means, that's for sure. So that's all great. But the reason why I mentioned that is actually that's my family is kind of what led me into the sustainable building portion. So I've been in construction since after high school. Went in, did my apprenticeship, became a carpenter, started running jobs in my think I was 21 when I ran my first job. Actually, I think I was younger than that, but in either case, went on my own in my early 20s and kind of been growing since then. But when I went on my own, I was just like every other, 20-year-old. I just wanted to go out, be my own boss and make more money. That's essentially what I was looking to do, right? That's what everybody wants to do when they're young. But it wasn't until that my wife and I, actually, we did a Tony Robbins event. That was kind of the kickoff. So we did this Tony Robbins event called Unleash the Power Within. And it kind of changed everything for us because it changed the way that we think. And if you change the way you think, it'll change your life. And we came back from that experience asking ourselves a lot of questions. And why do we do this? Why do we eat that? Well, what's the purpose of, the business? What's our life purpose? All those types of things, right? And we're kind of on cloud nine for a while. But then not too long after that, actually at another Tony Robbins event, we found out that we were going to have our first child, which we didn't know was a son at the time. First and only. And that really sunk in for me, because then all of a sudden for myself, I realized that if I was going to tell this little human being who's going to be looking up to me that he or she, who we didn't know at the time, could be whoever they want to be, I have to lead by example. So that's when things really clicked for me. And I changed the direction of the business because I started asking, what can we do in the construction industry? I like construction. I really enjoy it. I don't want to change that career, but how can we make sure that we leave this place better, right? How can I do my part to make sure that the earth is a better place when I leave it for my child and grandchildren, hopefully, to come years down the road, and everybody else for that matter. But it didn't really sink in, right? Till all of a sudden you have somebody else looking up to you that will be looking up to you and doing what you do, not what you say.
I really like the name of your company. How did you land on the Conscious Builder? And how does your name and what you stand for influence you and your work?
Yeah, so the word conscious really started to stick with my wife and I because consciousness is really a state of awareness, and you really can't change anything until you're aware of it. You can't, without that first step, awareness is the number one thing. So that's something that really stuck. And we ended up doing a podcast called the Conscious Living Podcast, which we did 70 some odd episodes with people all over the world, not in construction, but in other things. And my wife ended up running with that for a little while, which led into other things, obviously. But then we kind of started building these brands off of the word conscious. And that's where I started thinking about the construction part. And that's where the Conscious Builder came from, because the way we see our role is really as an educator. It's about making conscious decisions, but you need to be aware of what those implications are before you can make those decisions. And we see ourselves as being one of the most important people when people want to build a house or do a renovation. We are the ones who need to give them the information that they need in order to make conscious decisions. Does that mean that everything we do is 100% sustainable or have a net zero carbon effect on the world? No, because there's a lot of other factors at play as well, and everybody's different, right? We're not here to judge. We're here to just give the information, and it's up to the homeowners that we work with to make the final decision for whatever works for them and their families and their priorities.
Now, Casey, when you started out in this sector, what would you say were the disruptor in your field? What were the challenges you encountered in the beginning, and have you seen a societal or industry shift since?
Well, I'm kind of I always tell people we kind of build for the 1% of the 1%. We build for people. A custom home to begin with is not a cheap endeavor. It doesn't matter if you're building it sustainably or not. But you have to have the finances to be able to build a custom home, but then you actually have to care about the environment to want to go a step further, or care about your health or whatever it may be, or be aware of it, right? Because not a lot of people care about that stuff, but they're not aware of what the decisions they're making and how those decisions are affecting themselves and others around them. So I guess, at first we weren't a disruptor until we started to make this shift. And then we kind of just went all in and we jumped right into our passive house. And I wouldn't say we were a disruptor. We weren't the first one doing it, but we were kind of setting the bar more for ourselves than for anybody else to prove that what is possible, right? Here's what's possible. Here's what we believe. This is why we're doing it. Once again, we're not forcing anybody to do it. It's not like we're building hundreds and hundreds of homes every year. Maybe we'll get to a point where we can build some spec homes that are more in line with our values and create some interest with that. But that's not where we're at this point. So we really just continue to see ourselves as that company that can educate people, but beyond even our clients, other businesses as well, and other people in the industry.
Okay. It's safe to say that green homes have come a long way in the last decade, and building a green home is quickly shifting from an alternative way of building to more mainstream. There are a few building standards and certifications out there to choose from. Perhaps you can start us off by helping us to understand the most popular types of green builds and certifications your company does and how they differentiate.
Yeah, so I guess at the end of the day, like, we can build anything. We're certified to do all of the certifications that I'll mention. There is, I think I'd like to go back a little bit and I guess give a little bit of understanding, because obviously the word green can be thrown around quite a bit. We like to use, ultimately what we aim for is like a sustainable, a comfortable, and an efficient home, a healthy home. And if you build like a healthy, comfortable home, by default, it will be efficient, it will be sustainable. And in Ontario, where we are, the one that most people know about is EnergyStar. Now, what a lot of people don't know about EnergyStar is that obviously the building code changes and EnergyStar has to change as well. So if you're living in an EnergyStar home that was built 10, 15 years ago, it's actually worse than building code now. Because it has to change. Same with R2000. R2000 changed about 5-6 years ago, I believe. That is supposed to be 50% better than minimum building code. So there's minimum building code, which is pretty good now. EnergyStar is 20% better. R2000 should be around 50% better. There's LEED certification, which isn't big in residential, it's more in commercial, but then there's different levels of LEED certification. So that usually ranges from 40 to 70, 80% better, depending on what you're going for. But LEED's really focused on certain products and the carbon footprint, not necessarily just on efficiency. And then you get into, there's also net zero, which is CHBA's new standard, which I think is great. So it's technically about 30% better than minimum building code. But if you put solar panels on, you can offset all of your electricity bills or all of your energy bills. One caveat I'll say to that is technically there is a calculation that can offset your natural gas bill. However, you cannot produce natural gas. So I tell people, if you're going to put solar panels on, you might as well go fossil fuel free, because you will never put fossil fuels back into the ground. But that's maybe another conversation. But in theory, you end up being, and that's producing as much electricity as you use. And then there's the extreme, or like Passive House, which has Passive House International and Passive House US, which is about 80% better. These are all kind of just random numbers, random, but it depends on the design, obviously, right? But about 80% better than code. But that, in my opinion, would be to go true like off grid. You kind of need to go Passive House standard in our climate, because you need to design for the worst day or week of the year. And you can even get into things like living building challenge, where you can't use like any plastics in your house and all sorts of craziness. But there's no shortage of things that you can go after. But a lot of those aren't mainstream. The mainstream ones are really EnergyStar. And even R2000 has been around for years. A lot of people haven't heard of that. So I think EnergyStar and then net zero is picking up quite a bit of traction.
So I hear you have a passive home. Maybe you can tell us a bit about some of the features of your home that make it a certified passive home and its impact on your life.
Yeah, so we do not own it anymore. We sold it a couple of years ago. So we built it, lived in it for 4 years, sold it. And it did have a pretty big impact, obviously, on our business too. As far as I'm aware, we're the only builder who's actually built multiple certified passive homes within the area, because we've helped a couple architects do certified homes for themselves as well. Now, speaking about the house that we built for ourselves, really what it comes down to when it comes to building a passive home, the big focus on passive is the energy consumption, the heating and cooling demand. and the air tightness. So a big part of a comfortable, healthy home is how airtight you can make it. Ideally, you want to make it as airtight as you possibly can, and then control the ventilation through mechanical ventilation. A lot of people think that they need their home to breathe. Yes, you do need your home to breathe, but you want your home to breathe like your lungs breathe, right? You want to breathe in and out through your lungs. You don't want to breathe through your skin. So you don't want big holes through your walls. You want to seal those all up, and then you want to precondition the air that's coming into your house and filter it, just like what your nose would do. So that's kind of the best analogy that I give. And also, if you don't believe in air tightness, on a day like today, which is nice and cold, if you're in Ottawa, put on a jacket, go outside and unzip it and stand towards the wind, and you tell me if air tightness works or not. That's another analogy I like to use. We need air tightness, right? And you can have a really thin jacket and be warm if it's airtight, and a really thick jacket that's not airtight and be cold, right? So those are all things that are important. That's what Passive House really focuses on. There is high insulation levels, but it's a big focus on air tightness as well. So really the difference from a passive house to a regular house, or code, let's call it a code home, is there's more thought put into the envelope, which really comes down to the insulation, the air tightness, the windows and doors. And then by default, you also have to put some thought into your heating and cooling system, because it drastically reduces everything, as well as your ventilation system, because it becomes extremely important. So everything else could be the same. From the outside, you'd never know if a house was passive. Where you would pick it up is because you notice the walls are really thick, which you might not even notice from the outside. It depends on where they put their windows in the assembly. But other than that, you wouldn't notice it. But the real experience is when you live in it. When you live in a passive home, you realize how comfortable it is. You realize how quiet it is. You realize how fresh the air is in it all the time. We went to Florida for an extended period of time when we lived there. And when we came back, like, the house was vacant, been sitting vacant for a while, and it just smelled like fresh wood when we walked into the house. Like, leave a house vacant for a couple months and come back to it and tell me how fresh it smells. This house smelled fresh. You have to experience it. You can't really put it on a brochure and sell it to people. You just have to experience it. And those are the things that you get from a passive home. If you live in a passive home that's in the city beside a busy street, you will experience how nice it is to live in a passive home, because you won't hear anything outside. Those are the things that become really important. And you realize it's kind of one of those things, you don't miss it until you've experienced it and then don't have it anymore.
I think the general understanding, Casey, is that by choosing to go with a green building standard, there are higher upfront costs. What are the typical upfront costs, and what is considered a reasonable payback period for those investments?
That's difficult to answer. I won't be able to give you any exact numbers. Part of the reason I can't is because we've never built the same house twice. So the only real way to figure out what a payback period is if you take one home and you build it to minimum building code, and then you take the same exact design and you modify it to hit this next building code, right? And nobody's done that to my knowledge, right? So a lot of people say it costs you 20% more to passive house, or 10% more, or whatever it may be. But 10% more than what? What is that baseline? Mm-hmm. And I think what people don't realize, because I've had this come up a lot in passive house, is that you can build, I can build you a 2,500 square foot home with vinyl siding, carpet, shingle roof, PVC windows, all like the lower IKEA kitchen, like all these lower end features. Or I can build you the same size home with a copper roof and a stone exterior and reclaimed wood hardwood floors and a $150,000 custom kitchen, same square footage, completely different makeup, let's say, on the outside. Different baseline to start with. So to take the more expensive model and go up to passive, it's going to be a very small percent. To take the cheaper option and go to passive, it's going to be a much higher percent. Because where you end up spending money when it comes to building, whether it's passive or just a more energy efficient home, it's going to be around the envelope. You'll spend more on your insulation and air sealing, and you'll spend more on potentially your HVAC system if you go fossil fuel free, right? In theory, you can actually save money on your HVAC system because you will need a smaller system. But when we build homes, a lot of them are in 10 years of business, we've only built 2 homes with natural gas. All the rest have been fossil fuel free. And just because the technology is more expensive, it just costs a little bit more. So the energy consumption or the cost to run those things would be the same. So I don't think it really comes down to what's the payback. I think yes, you will save energy costs if you're comparing apples to apples. I don't know how long it's going to take, but I think I'm hoping, I believe that there will be value in the future, right? There's not a lot of value with any of these certifications on the marketplace right now, especially with the way the market's going now. But soon enough, just like gas mileage, I think it would be important for people to realize the importance of the ERS rating on their home and how that affects them and their comfort and so forth.
From everything I've read, Ottawa's housing market is booming despite pandemic. What have you noticed most during this time?
We've noticed that we have a lot of leads. Like, we have no shortage of people reaching out to us for work, but people can't find lots. People are looking to build, but they can't find a lot, right? There's no lot to build, or they can't, they find a house, they lose the house to somebody else who wanted to pay more for it. So that's what we're seeing, right? That's the toughest part. Obviously, we're seeing that there's increase in price, right? Typically when demand goes up, prices go up. So that's affecting material, subtrades, and so forth. So it makes it harder to estimate projects. Everything that we do is open book and cost plus. So we have our fees. So if things go up, we just need to communicate that to our clients. But for the most part, they're aware of the situation that we're in, right? There's a lot of delays. People are just busy. And we're trying to find guys, and we don't have it. So if anybody's listening to this and want to join our team, definitely submit an application at thecontrabuilder.com. But we're looking for carpenters and helpers, because we can't keep up with the work that is coming our way, but also with the work that we already have, because some of the delays, now things are starting to pile up.
Now, Casey, I'm going to read your company's mission statement from your website because I really like it. It says that your mission is to make sure that everybody in the world has a healthy, comfortable, and efficient home to live in. What do you think is needed to achieve that? Is it financial incentives? Is it government policy to support homeowners and the industry?
Well, I believe we all need to take responsibility for our own homes, right? We need to, at least the ones of us who have that ability to do that, right? We need to lead by example. It's not to say, like, our mission statement doesn't mean that we're going to build homes for everybody. It means that we're going to do our best to provide the information for people to do that for themselves, or to hire somebody to do it, or to ask the right questions to the builder, whoever they're working with, right? We're not going to be able to build for everybody. There's only so many houses, so many projects that we can do in a year. But if we can help somebody else in another city or province ask the right questions and find the right builder for somebody who's doing that, or we can help that builder become better and educate them, and that's what it's going to take. I think, it's interesting when with regards to incentives, or those obviously help, but I think that they help for the wrong reasons, right? So the question is, how do we get people to want to care about this, right? To actually want to improve the health of their home, the comfort of their home, without being financially incentivized. They want to do it because they know it's better for themselves. They know it's better for their kids, or they know it's better for the environment because they're using less electricity. That's the tricky part. And I don't know if I have the answer to that. I'm just doing my part to say, we need to do this. Like, it's obvious. You can look at things happening in the world. We have to act. I will say that there's no act that's too little. Like, every little step helps, right? Even if you can't improve the performance of your home. Like, we're living in a home right now. There is natural gas in the home that we're living in right now. We didn't build it. It wasn't by our choice, but we do other things that we can, that are within our power, to offset our carbon footprint, for example. Those are all things that we can do, right? You stop using plastic bags and use, cloth bags, or whatever it may be, is a really simple one, right? To start using the compost more often, right? If you're turn down the thermostat a little bit, or just doing things in the right order too, right? Don't people like to jump into low-hanging fruit? There is a proper order of tackling your renovations in your home if you are going that route as well. So these are all things that, fall, and there's a lot of information there, but I think ultimately we just need to take responsibility and lead by example. And that goes for governments too, right? They have a lot of homes that they can upgrade, that are, funded, it actually makes a much better financial case for someone like the government or any sort of community housing that holds multiple properties, that pays the bills, that needs something that's going to last a long time. They can really make a financial case for building something like Passive House. There, it makes a lot of sense. It's harder to do the one-off projects.
Moment of truth, Casey. Are there any myth you would like to dispel around buildings or renovating green?
Yeah, the myth I think I already alluded to was that your house needs to breathe. Right? A lot of people think that they need their house to breathe and you don't want it to be too airtight. Like I said, you do want your walls to be as airtight as possible, but you want them to be permeable, meaning like you want vapor to be able to travel through them if need be, but not air. And that is, I'll go back to the analogy I already said, is that just like your body, you need to breathe as a human, you breathe through your lungs. You don't breathe through your skin. You sweat through your skin, right? So if moisture needs to get out of your body, it will come through your skin. But if air needs to come out here, it's going to go through your lungs and out your mouth. It's the same sort of thing. So think of your nose and mouth as the ventilation system, your mechanical ventilation system for your home that preconditions, right? So that's how you want to ventilate your home. A lot of people get these homes, they have this box hanging in the basement. It's an HRV. I hope that people are starting to put ERVs in because those are actually what we need in our climate. People will argue with me on that, but people in the high performance building community understand this. But a lot of homeowners get it. They don't understand it because they weren't explained what it does or how it works, and they just unplug it and they never run it. We need to run those. Like you want that fresh air system to be running 24/7, and you want to seal up all the other holes. So make your house as airtight as possible, mechanically ventilate it, and that will help your indoor air quality.
Now, my friend, it's time to dust off your crystal ball. What are some of the emerging technologies and innovations that excite you about your industry?
So in our industry, I think we're lagging a little bit. Like there's obviously a lot of technology when it comes to solar panels, and there's even some solar panels that are coming out that can generate electricity at night with the condensation that forms on the back of them. I think that there's a lot of promise for 3D printing. That's where I believe that there's going to be a huge impact. I think building homes in a more controlled environment, like in a factory, makes a lot of sense. However, you are limited by the radius around that factory to do it. That's where I think 3D printing can come into play. If you could have, the technology is doing some amazing things, but if there's a machine that could show up on site and literally print a house and then move over to the next set and print, like they're doing it, like in China, like it's not printing everything, right? But they're printing the structure, right? They printed like 10 houses in a day. There's these tiny little cabins. It comes out like soft ice cream. It's like a cement mixture of some sort. There's also a company, I think it's University of Southern California, starting up company, university. They're doing a lot of really cool testing. They've been doing it for 15 years at this point, where they would have this machine show up and print it. And really it's designed for areas where there might be mass destruction, like an earthquake or a hurricane or something comes through and just destroys all the buildings in the area. These machines could show up and print out these shacks really quickly where people would at least be protected from the elements. I think that's where the technology is going. It's going to be hopefully automating things. Now, when it comes to renovations, it's going to be harder. Like I think we're still going to need manpower for a long time, but there's even robots coming out there that can navigate rough terrain, right? That there's a robot I saw was navigating rough terrain and laying bricks, right? So I think there's just so much. I think construction is one of those industries that hasn't been disrupted yet when it comes to technology. We're still slapping 2x4s and 2x6s together the same way we did it 150 years ago, at least where we live here in Ottawa. And there's a lot of room for improvement. So I don't know what's going to come first, but I think 3D printing is going to have a huge impact in our industry.
Well, Casey, for folks that want to make their existing homes more energy efficient and help contribute to a low carbon future, where should they start and what should they know if they want to pursue some of the standards or certifications you mentioned earlier in the podcast?
Well, you should start by checking out The Conscious Builder. We got a lot of stuff on our YouTube channel. There's probably, if you have any questions, you can probably find it there. And if you can't, send them our way and we'll answer them for you. But ultimately, you need to, I always tell people, you got to build your team. You have to do what's called an integrated design process. So if you have an existing home that you want to improve the comfort, the performance, the efficiency, whatever it is, your purpose, there is a certain way that you need to do that. You can't just tackle the low hanging fruit. Number one, you're going to need an energy advisor. You need your baseline, right? So that energy advisor needs to come in. They need to take basically set a line of here's how your house performs now. And then in that report, they will say, if you upgrade your windows, if you upgrade your insulation, if you upgrade the insulation in your basement, your attic, your air tightness, this is how much more it's going to improve the performance. So there's all these things that it gives you. But you can't just go, for example, and look at, oh, I'm going to save 20% if I upgrade my furnace. I might as well start with that. What'll happen is that if you do your furnace first and your air conditioning, and then you upgrade your windows, and then you make your house more airtight, and then you add more insulation to your walls, or your attic, you now end up having a furnace that's oversized and it's short cycles. So you want to first focus on your envelope. So do everything you possibly can with your envelope first. That will reduce the heating and cooling demand. And then before you actually put your new heating and cooling system in, get the energy advisor back to test again so that you can get a properly sized system. Most people's homes have systems that are too large. And that's one of the reasons they end up with cold rooms and hot rooms, because it might be balanced, but the issue is not running long enough to get the air to the far parts of the house, for example, or the air tightness wasn't done properly. So you need a good team that can work well together. That's going to be your energy advisor, it'll be your designer, and it'll be your contractor. They need to understand the importance of all these things. And then you need to make the hard decisions of what you're going to do first. Because most people, I've yet to have a client who says, here's the work we want to do and here's the money we have, and then they have leftover money. It's usually, here's the work we want to do and here's the money we have. And I say, okay, well, what's most important to you? Because we can't fit it all in, right? So let's fit as much as we possibly can in is what the goal is.
Well, Casey, are you ready to close us off with some rapid fire questions?
Sure. Okay. That means I got to keep my answers short, right?
What is your favorite word?
My favorite word? Well, I'd have to go with conscious. I've never been asked that question before, but I think conscious is a good one.
What is the one thing you can't live without?
My family.
Okay, this one's interesting. What habit or hobby have you picked up, Casey, during shelter in place?
I have gotten into cryptocurrency. So educating myself on that and that technology and how that's changing the financial world, actually. So, so I've been educating myself on that.
If you could have just one superpower, what would it be?
That's a good one. I think I just want to fly just because that'd be fun.
Okay, Casey, if you could turn back time and talk to your 18-year-old self, what would you tell him?
I don't think I'd tell him anything. This is something I have thought about before. And the reason I say that is because if I were to tell him something, I wouldn't be where I am today. And I wouldn't have made the mistakes that I had to make growing up. So I don't think I would say anything. I would just leave him and let him figure out stuff as he's supposed to.
And lastly, my friend, what do you currently find most interesting about your sector?
What's most interesting is still what was interesting before, is that there is room for growth. There is a lot of opportunity to improve homes, both new homes and renovations. And there's never one, at least in what we do, there's never one the same. So every project's different. Everyone has a new problem to solve, new challenge that we need to accept and overcome. So I think that's what keeps me going, is I like that variety, and I like that being able to take on those new challenges ultimately.
Casey, we've reached the end of another episode of the ThinkEnergy podcast. Thank you. Thank you very much for joining us today. I hope you had a lot of fun. Cheers.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This has been a lot of fun. Those are some good rapid fire questions too.
Thank you for joining us today. I truly hope you enjoyed this episode of the ThinkEnergy podcast. For past episodes, make sure you visit our website, hydroottawa.com/podcasts. Lastly, if you found value in this podcast, be sure to subscribe. Anyway, this podcast is a wrap. Cheers, everyone.